So the purpose of this video is to help you as an individual stand in your own legal strength against an event happening to you from the outside that you don't believe in. I'm going to use the example of vaccines. It doesn't necessarily mean this technique I'm going to show you only applies to vaccines. It can be applied to many things. However, I'm going to use vaccines as an example because it's topical right now, and it does actually make for a very good example for this technique I'm going to show you. It creates almost like a legal shield around you. It is not impenetrable. You have to do certain things to maximize its chance of working. And by no means am I giving you legal advice. What I'm sharing with you is something that I've learned over many years and applied in court myself. I have gone into the black hole itself. I've seen it. I was on that event horizon. I've seen the darkness. I've worked and studied till I'm blue in the face. What I'm going to try and give you now is the simplest, easiest, most effective way of being able to not allow something you don't want to happen to you or your family happen to you. Now, a lot of people look at me and say, well, Scott, why are you helping people not get vaccines? It's better, it's best for all of us. And if not everybody gets the vaccines, it's not going to work. One simple reason: you have the right to choose your own health. You have that right. And when a government or when a health organization is unable to convince a majority of the population or enough of the population that it is good enough and safe enough to be voluntarily given and voluntarily be taken, if you as a government or a health organization have not met that criteria of convincing the public that it's safe, that is your problem. Don't now go and convince governments to make this mandatory across everybody. That's why I'm going to share this technique with you today. This technique is going to require work. It's not something you're going to have to do alone. It's not easy to implement, but it is quite simple and it's very, very doable. Now, there are three different components that you need to put together. Again, this is not legal advice. I'm not giving you legal advice. I'm just giving you an example of a strategy that you can use. In my opinion, once again, in my non-legal opinion, everything I'm going to show you now is completely lawful. So it's not about some weird, shady, underhanded stuff. It's completely lawful, and everything in it is going to be, once again, in my opinion, acceptable by your normal kind of legal codes of conduct or moral and ethical codes of conduct. In other words, it's not this weird conspiracy stuff, but at the same time, it makes a very strong point to the kind of typical legal community that, hey, dude, we have rights too, and we can use your system against you if we believe it is being used unfairly against us. Okay, now let's talk about these three things that, in my opinion, need to fall into place. If you're in America right now, this technique will work very well, along with other sort of Western countries, UK, Australia, South Africa, many countries, Europe even as well. As you get to more into the Asian countries, it becomes more and more difficult, but still powerful. So you need to localize what I'm teaching you here. You need to bring it into your own communities, beyond your family, but into your communities. So if you do not want the vaccine to be forced upon you, or worse, if you do not want your child to be taken away, to be forced quarantined by the society that wants to take your child away and quarantine them, then it's going to be a bit of a legal battle. But if you do not put up a battle at all, if you do not put up a fight, you will lose. If you try to just stand up and say no without any reason, without any shield, you will almost certainly lose. Okay, you need to give yourself a legal fighting chance. And one phrase I want you guys to remember in this whole process is the concept of muddying the waters. All right, muddying the waters. The way that you're going to muddy the water is you're going to do it using a legal framework, okay, which is going to be localized for you, plus potentially other things that might apply to you as well. This is just the overall structure. Three things that you need to do. I'm going to start at the top. Number one, register a non-profit organization for your community. And by community, I'm talking maybe minimum of around 20 or 30 people, maybe a maximum of a few hundred people. You can have a non-profit organization for several thousand people, but then it gets political and it gets different. You want to create these little decentralized pockets. Now, why would you need a non-profit organization to help you defend yourself from your rights? The easiest way of explaining it is you need somebody to divert attention. And when I say somebody, I'm not kidding, because it's a legal person. It's a legal entity. If somebody walks into your house and wants to vaccinate you, right? They come into your house and they're going to force you to do it. And if you say no, they can hold you down and do it. You need a legal shield. You need somebody to deflect the argument and say, listen, I don't mean to be rude here, but I need you to talk to this entity because they're defending me in this matter. They are representing me. They are assisting me in this matter. They do not see you as the human being, as anyone who can put up a fight. But when you've created a legal structure, they have to listen to that structure. They have to give it the due diligence and attention that it deserves. Muddy the water. It means it starts to create a less cut and dry approach. They can't just walk in and do what they want. You are now sneakily creating something. And it's not even sneaky. That's the wrong word. It's a legitimate course where you can stand up for your rights and say, I'm sorry, don't talk to me. Here's some documentation, which is actually the third thing I'm going to talk about in a second. But the first thing is you register a non-profit organization, which you're going to become a member of, along with the other 50, 100, 300 people around you. It's good for these nonprofits to be geographically localized. They should be in your communities. They should live relatively close or as close as possible. They should at least be in your own city or your own town or your own district where possible. And I'm going to explain why in a second. So once you've created this nonprofit organization, you now have your own legal monopoly piece that can go to court on your behalf, that can represent not just one person, because no one cares about one person, but 50 or hundreds of people. It gets taken a lot more seriously. That nonprofit organization has in it a constitution. Okay, the constitution is a document that explains this and how your beliefs and what the organization stands for. So you see what's happening here. You have a nonprofit organization registered like a company gets registered. It's an in-profit, non-profit, non-government, whatever you want to call it. It's an organization like a charity. You've effectively got a charity, and that charity has a constitution. And that constitution mustn't be obvious. You can't say, this is a constitution of people against vaccines. That's not good for society. When you register a charity, it's got to be good for a portion of society, and you have to register it as such. So what you're doing is you're registering a non-profit organization that is something to do with the rights of the healthy, or the rights of the healthy to protect themselves, or people against corruption or incorrect syringes, or you can list a couple of things that are pertinent, that are basically saying, you know what, we actually believe that maybe that in terms of we don't really trust the syringes that are being used, for example, amongst other things. And you can list them. So you create a constitution with a bunch of things, and in that constitution it says, and other similar type of events. Now, when you create this constitution and you write it and you create the nonprofit, and all the people in your community who want to take part become registered members, they now become members of this organization. You now have an entity that can protect you, and it can help you, it can help look after you. And as I said before, you can now deflect. Listen, I'm sorry, it's like a union. Don't talk to me, talk to my union. Don't talk to me, talk to my lawyer. Don't talk to me, talk to this nonprofit organization, because I'm a member of them. They're protecting my rights, and they said I should not answer any of your further questions, or I should not partake in this any further. Now, what am I going to say is the absolutely most critical thing about this whole video. So what I'm about to show you now is so fundamentally pivotal that if you don't do this, everything else is going to fail. And it goes back to the concept of muddying the waters. All right, now you need to listen, please listen carefully, because this is so important. You need to not accept and not reject the vaccine or whatever it is that you're trying to avoid happening to you. It's not, you need to not accept or reject it. In other words, you cannot go out there and say, I reject the vaccine. I'm not going to take this vaccine. Don't do that. It's going to fail. Okay. Because once you reject something specifically, the statute or the law that they're going to pass, or may not pass, let's hope they don't, that makes it mandatory for you to do that thing. The moment you do not comply, it creates a very clear-cut way for them to force themselves upon you. It's going to become very difficult. So you cannot outwardly reject the vaccine. What you do is you just don't accept the vaccine. I know it sounds weird. This is the key. Okay, so how does this work? when somebody comes into your house, or if they come into your house and they say, we're going to give you this vaccine, don't say, hey, I'm not going to take this vaccine. Go away from me. Get away from me. How dare you? That is a clear-cut reason for them to say, tick, patient refuses, send in the police, not their problem anymore. You need to not accept the vaccine and muddy the waters. Okay, so now you've got a nonprofit organization with a written constitution, and you're a member of this. There's a few other things that have got to take past. You need to do your research in your own local, and you need to possibly get some help on this, but it's not that difficult. You've created the entity, you're a member of it now. There's a constitution. What you then do is you create the next stage, which is actually the third step. The top step, right? The top one is the creation of the nonprofit. The third step at the bottom is a letter or a document. And the document effectively says, in simple, plain English words, dear whoever it happens to be, I wish to voice the fact that I do not consent to vaccinations. At the same time, I am not rejecting the vaccinations, but I do have some important questions that I feel I need to ask as a citizen concerned about my health and the health of my family. Now, remember what happens in any courtroom. Why do you think people like Jeffrey Epstein and all these rich people always get away with stuff until eventually, some miracle, they eventually get caught, but years and years and years later? But only a small fraction ever get caught. Why is that? Because the top lawyers know how to muddy the waters. They know how to throw a whole bunch of other stuff in there to stop this from happening. You, if you want to use this technique, are going to use that same thing right back at them. You now have a nonprofit organization that's been created. Now you have a document, and it can be done in the form of a letter or a document. It doesn't matter. Just saying, I'm not rejecting the vaccine, but I'm not consenting to it until such time as a few of my points have been addressed. And there's going to be a number of different points that you're going to put in there. And those points must not be copy and paste from all the other same nonprofit organizations. You can't copy and paste and use the same one. They must be different in different locations, different wording, etc. The reason for that is if it's too centralized and if you use the same thing or the same nonprofit or the same letter, the system is just going to learn how to reject that letter. It'll work a few times, but then eventually they're just going to say, okay, if you get this letter, this is what you say. But the letter has to be different each time. And because it's different each time, it means they have to deal with it separately each time. Again, you see what you're doing, guys? You're muddying the waters. This is how powerful this becomes. Now, you've got this documentation. So somebody's going to come into your house. Now, ideally, you should send this letter before they've even come into your house, notifying them that you do not consent until such time as your questions are answered. Listen to what you're doing. If they come into your house and you present them with that documentation, then they're going to look at this. Oh, well, I've got questions. I'll have to go to my boss. That's okay. Don't worry. You go back to your boss. Have a chat to them, formulate the answers to my questions, and then let's have a discussion afterwards. By the way, can I just get your name here? Would you mind signing? They will probably refuse to sign. That's fine, but just ask them questions. Be so nice. Make them tea. Have a conversation. They're on the clock. They need to hit their targets. And you're like, oh no, let's have some tea. Let's have some coffee. I have a few questions, about this vaccine. Ma'am, it's mandatory. I understand, but it's not the vaccine. I'm not arguing about the fact it's mandatory. I'm not really sure about how the syringes were transported. What is the brand of syringe that you're using there? Oh, is that, can you confirm that brand of syringe is actually ratified and certified by the World Health Organization? Are you sure? That packaging looks a bit empty. I'm just going to make a note here. Not empty. The packaging looks a bit torn there. Could have a hole in it. I'm just going to make a note here, if it's okay, that the packaging looks a little bit torn, because obviously I'm very concerned about the health of my family. This is what muddying the waters does. But it's got to be legitimate, and you must be friendly and nice and polite and waste their time. That's what they do to you when you go to court. They make you sit in that flipping courtroom. They make you work days, weeks. They charge you a fortune. You're going to play the same trick right back at them. So, have a situation where you are going to ask questions. It's better to actually send a letter or similar letter before they even arrive at your house to give you those vaccines, or whether they force you to go and queue up. So when they come after you and say, why aren't you getting vaccines? You can say, well, I did send this document, and then I sent another document saying I haven't got a reply yet. Nobody's replied to me yet. So until I get that reply, then I'm afraid I'm going to have to not provide you with the consent to give me this vaccine until that's done. By the way, I'm being represented by this nonprofit organization. Would you mind taking it up with them? Now, that nonprofit organization can have legal representation. It can represent people in court. It can muddy the waters even further. And that's what you're looking to do. You're looking to take the fight from a grassroots level, and you're looking to move it up into the nonprofit level, into that level, and you can delay it in court for potentially years. Don't forget, guys, that there are going to be constitutional court challenges. There's going to be high court challenges. A lot of stuff is going to happen about these mandatory vaccines. It's going to be a huge, huge, huge fight. There's more going on at the top than we know. Different people are going to be warring against each other to make them mandatory. What you can do is actually help that process. You will actually be helping those few good lawyers out there who are actually fighting for people's rights. And you can help them by using letters like this, but in a very gentle, nice way, working it through a nonprofit organization, because all of those, get this, all of those nonprofit organizations, right? Those nonprofits can all join together against a bigger class action or a constitutional court case. So you're actually giving more power to those different legal entities to help you fight. I know a lot of people want to go off the grid, off the legal grid, just don't even get involved. And I hear you. If you try to do this on your own and stand up, there's a high chance you're going to fail. Maybe you'll get away with it for a year or two, but the chances are it's not going to work. What we're trying to show you guys now how to do this is a way that can work extremely powerfully. Now, if you do these two things, you'll have a very powerful approach. If you do the third thing, you have an extremely powerful approach. The third thing is in the middle. It is a very, very good idea to create decentralized WhatsApp groups or Telegram groups. A lot of people don't like using WhatsApp because of data privacy. What I'm showing you now is completely legal and completely lawful in my non-legal opinion. It's completely legal and completely lawful. So don't hide. Don't hide. Just put it on a normal WhatsApp group. You want them to know. You want the system to know that there's these WhatsApp groups that are being created under these nonprofit organizations, and then people in the local neighborhoods are watching to see what's going to happen. And if somebody hears there's a siren going and somebody gets out to force a vaccination or whatever you think may or may not happen, and I'm hoping this will never happen, then somebody's going to film it and it's going to go on the WhatsApp group. And that WhatsApp group is then going to be shared with other WhatsApp groups, because the organizers of one group are going to communicate with the organizers of other groups into this decentralized grid. So all the stuff and all the learnings, and everybody's going to be sharing information, and they're going to be learning about what's going on. And this is the information exchange. So the nonprofit is your legal weapon, all right? The letter is your personal weapon. Your WhatsApp groups are your community and data and information exchange weapon. Okay, so you're going to use these three interchangeably. Once you've created these three things, now you can start getting a video. Oh, it looks like somebody's arrived. And if somebody wants to come and vaccinate you, I'm just going to invite my neighbors over WhatsApp group. Guys, please, can you just come over and film it? Just to let you know, we're going to be filming this whole thing from start to finish. Sorry, what was your name again? I just didn't get it for the record. So these are the kind of things that you've got to do, muddy the waters. If you outrightly reject the vaccine, you will probably fail. If you acquiesce to it and you say, yes, I'm happy to have the vaccine, that is your absolute right. What we're saying here is if you can just put the two together, all right, and come up with a middle ground so that those people who don't want to be vaccines don't have it forced upon them. But at the same time, those people that do want it understand there has to be a legal process and a legitimate process that has to be followed, that everything has to be safe and sanitary, and that the people are doing it are the credentials. You have every right to question the credentials of whoever is giving you that vaccine. You have the right to check the credentials of whoever is in charge of that hospital, who they work for. You have the right to check the credentials of the corporations that are there. You have the right to check the branding of whatever it is they're using. This is within your realm of legal strength. And I hope that this video gives you guys the opportunity to feel a little bit better, that you can do something and you can be completely open and completely legal, in my non-legal opinion, and completely lawful, and both parties can actually feel that they are willing to do it, but do it using the proper methodology. And if there is a proper methodology and these do turn out to be completely safe and the vaccines are working, nobody's getting hurt by them, everything is working, the actual ingredients are made public, all this wonderful thing, then both parties will be happy to accept it and they'll come together. Until such time, you have the right, in my opinion, to say, no, thank you.